Welcome to this special edition of Behind the Story. I'm Ted Nesi, substituting for Eli Sherman, and we're going to take you today behind the scenes in 12 News' ongoing coverage of the shooting at Brown University and the aftermath. And for that, I'm joined by my colleagues, 12 News anchor Kim Kalunian and 12 News chief investigative reporter Tim White. Hello to both of you. We've all been covering this almost nonstop for over 90 hours now, and I will say it's been one of the most intense news events I've ever covered. I assume it's the same for both of you.
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, I think one of the biggest I ever covered, I worked at WBZ-TV in Boston during 9/11. So that was obviously very intense. And I also think of the station nightclub fire in 2003 that took the lives of 100 people. But obviously this shooting at Brown University is a significant event that we've covered.
It's sort of all-consuming, like early COVID, Kim.
Absolutely, like early COVID or some of the George Floyd protests that we covered around that time as well. I think of the Boston Marathon bombing. It was a really chaotic, tense, and scary situation. Obviously a very tragic one, and certainly, yeah, it was a very intense news environment.
So I want to take us back to Saturday when the shooting happened, and I know some of the folks watching this will be outside of Rhode Island because this is airing all over the country. Saturday at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time is when roughly when the first 911 call came in. The point of the show is to talk about kind of what's behind the story, the reporting that goes into it. And so the first thing people should understand from our perspective is, you remember this, Kim, as a former weekend reporter and anchor, we have a very skeletal staff,
Sure.
And most newsrooms do on
That's
a
right.
Saturday afternoon. I'll just start for myself. In a total coincidence, I was here. I never work Saturdays for the most part, and I was working on a story I hadn't had time to get done, and I came in at 3:30. Again, totally just that was the time that worked, and I was at my desk working on something that is not running yet now, and start to see the email traffic from our crews racing down there. Ryan Welch, I think Corey was headed there, Johnny Villela, Barbara Ron, and saying, you see these words mass casualty event start to pop up internally in our emails, but there are sometimes false alarms on these things, and then somehow it quickly became clear something real was going on, and I raced down to the newsroom and didn't leave for many, many hours and was locked in until the overnight hours. Tim, how did you learn what was going on?
Yeah, I had actually been here at Channel 12 earlier in the day finishing up on a project and then had gone home. And as a matter of fact, it was my daughter who's in college. It was home, and she came out and said, Dad, a friend of hers who is an engineering student at Brown University and spends a lot of time in the Barris and Holly building where the building shooting took place. Luckily, he was not in there, had texted her and said there is an active shooter. I called the newsroom instantly, realized it was very real, grabbed my suit and started driving in. In the meantime, a staff member I know at Brown forwarded me a Brown alert. And the Brown alert system early on in this event was really how we got initial information about what was going on. And it was that first Brown alert where we could publish something on our website, that there was something going on. We didn't obviously have a lot of details, but I just drove in with an event like this. You don't wait to be told to come into the newsroom, you just go.
And Kim, we just need to be transparent here. We are married
Yes,
as well, along with working together. And so I wasn't with you, but you
Right.
found out, was it when I texted you or had you heard by then?
So I was with our daughter, our toddler, and I try not to look at my phone too much when I'm with her. And Tim actually called me, which I happen to have my watch on, which I don't usually at home, and it buzzed my wrist, and I just thought it's unusual that Tim is calling me right now on a Saturday afternoon. You weren't home, and it made me a little bit nervous. And then I plugged in, looked at the email traffic, talked to both of you as well. And I was supposed to be going to an event that night, and so my mother arrived to take care of Samantha. Again, sort of a coincidence that this worked out. So I was able to call into the newsroom, make sure that we could, get out the door. I could get out the door and begin, reporting. And it was unclear at that hour exactly where reporting staff should go besides going right to the scene, because we didn't know where briefings would happen, where we would hear from officials. So I just sort of got in the car and drove to the area. I caught the tail end of the first briefing, I believe, and then I just went to the scene just to sort of get a lay of the land, and that's where I stayed for the rest
And
of
you
the
found
night.
Ryan Welch, our photographer, right?
That's right. He had been there for a couple of hours already. I mean, he was there very quickly after all of this happened.
So it's a good segue because to sort of bring you into the reporting, we have, I think, a piece of your first live shot, Kim. Tim, you'd already been in the air for quite a while. I was manning our live blog, our constant updates, and here's some of what Kim said. This was right after she's arrived at the scene.
It is really a surreal and somber scene out here. We are standing at the intersection of Thayer and Angel Street, and you can see it is still extremely active here behind me. I spent my teenage years growing up here on this street. I went to high school just down the road. To see the perimeter set up here, to see how many roads are blocked off, how quiet it is on a weekend leading up to the Christmas season when it should be buzzing with students and shoppers and people going to restaurants. It's really a surreal moment to be taking all of this in. My photographer, Ryan Welch, has been here on the scene for hours now, and he said earlier there were so many ambulances here, not just from Providence, but from surrounding communities as well. And we've seen many police cars, not just from Providence, but again, from surrounding communities. This is a massive scene. I was just trying to find out exactly how big the perimeter is here, as we know that there is still not a confirmed suspect in custody. It's still unclear to me exactly how big this is, but trying to navigate around this area, around Thayer Street, Angel Street, Brown University, it's very difficult because they have so many things shut down.
Just a flavor of how the reporting was going that night.
And I just have to say, we are taping on a Wednesday afternoon following the shooting, so we're 5 days out from the shooting. We've been working around the clock, obviously. That feels like a month ago.
It does.
Rewatching
That's
Kim's that live shot there, really, it doesn't feel like it was 5 days ago.
And before I want to turn to Tim on the flow of information, but just before I do that, Kim, one last question for you, which is, we did get a question about security.
Yeah.
Going straight to the scene where, by definition, a gunman is at large and people have just been killed and injured. How do you think about that, or do you think about that?
Yes, of course, it's in the back of my mind for sure. And, there had been an initial report that the gunman had been found. And I truly can't remember at this point if I had driven to the scene thinking that the gunman was in custody or if I had heard otherwise at that point. But then once I had given this update, I obviously knew that the suspect was still at large. We sign up for this. We have a job to do. There were lots of police officers there, so I didn't necessarily feel in danger. But I will say, as the night wore on, you're looking around at all of these deserted storefronts and shops and restaurants. And it didn't dawn on me until much later that people were hiding inside of those storefronts as they started to be evacuated onto buses.
Hundreds
of people were hiding in these stores and buildings and, offices. And that was really
I remember you saying you saw people through the window of the Brown bookstore, right?
Yes.
Just watching.
Yes.
Remarkable. All right, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Tim's going to talk through kind of how the information came in on Saturday night and what reporters do to sift through information in an intense, chaotic breaking news environment like this. I'm Ted Nesi. Stick with us on Behind the Story. Welcome back to the Behind the Story. I'm Ted Nesi filling in for Eli Sherman, joined by my colleagues Kim Kalunian and Tim White as we recap some of the first days of reporting on the Brown University shooting in our newsroom, our 12 News newsroom, I should say. Again, we're taping this Wednesday afternoon, and the shooting happened on Saturday afternoon. Tim, I want to talk about this now from your perspective. So as you said earlier, you arrived. You were basically on set for our continuous coverage for the duration at that point into the evening. Talk about tracking the flow of information. We were getting conflicting reports. Yeah. We had a lot of different sources coming in, kind of how you were triaging that live on the air.
The most important thing in a breaking news situation like this that involves public safety, of course, is being timely, but getting it right, and trying to distill the information that is coming in fast and furious in real time. I was on the air for 7 hours straight with our anchors, Shannon Heggie and Mike Montecalvo, and I was on set with them. And my role in these situations is to sort of be the arbiter of information that is coming in, from you, if you're texting me, from the newsroom is, emailing me. And, the video you're looking at here, you can see I have my MacBook in front of me, and it's a small thing. But what's important about that is on my MacBook, I can get text messages directly on the screen, so I don't have to be looking at my phone while also looking at Brown's website and their alert system, as well as the emails that are coming in. And I'm talking to, in real time, as I'm on set there, my law enforcement sources that are working this, as well as public safety officials that I'm in contact with. And they know I'm on the air, and they want to make sure that we're providing information that is important for the public to know, so they're contacting me. And Kim brought this up in the first half of the program. Initially, Brown University had put out that there was a suspect in custody.
Very early, within a half hour or so, I think.
And yeah, that's right. It was in the first hour. So, and then they removed that. And they reminded everybody that the shelter in place was still in effect, and they put out that chilling message that said, hide, run, hide, or fight. Those are the three options, that kind of a thing. And I was getting messages from public safety officials that asked me to really talk about they did not have a suspect in custody, because it would give people that false sense of security if a suspect was in custody, and they still wanted people to shelter in place, and that Brown had removed that. So we're also getting a lot of information to the newsroom that we're not sure about. So in that moment, I have to make those decisions about what information are we going with. I'm communicating with you in the newsroom as well, as we're trying to authenticate certain things, because we absolutely want to get this right. And the other thing is, do not speculate in these circumstances. That is absolutely key. I could talk about, from reporting on law enforcement for 25 plus years, what their methods are. But it's also, we're sort of programmed not to repeat things. In these situations, not only is it okay, it is key, because people are just learning about something. They're tuning in to Channel 12, to our website, to our 12 Plus app at different times as people are realizing what's going on. So it's okay to reestablish what we know in that moment.
It's actually, I got an interesting message last night as you're talking about that, Tim, because this was the other thing we should know, this was an international story. I was on the radio in Australia that night. I was on the radio in the United Kingdom. I know our friend Steph Machado at the Boston Globe, a WPRI alum, was also on the radio in Britain, because people from all over the world were looking at this. And a national reporter I know who had put on X, said, linked to our live blog and said, you can trust these folks here, got an email yesterday or the day before from a reader. This person covers business, saying their daughter goes to Brown. They're on the West Coast, and they were grateful to be pointed to a very continuously updated source of information, which is what we were trying to do on the web along with on television, which is heartening, but is also, I think, goes to the responsibility you're talking about, Tim.
And I'll tell you, the first thing I do when there's a big breaking news event somewhere in the country, there's a big breaking news event in Ohio or something like that, I go to the local news station in those markets, because that is where they are sourced. Those reporters have contacts in that area, and I know I'm going to get the most up-to-date, reliable information.
Well, and Kim, even like the way you were reciting street names. I mean, we know this place. We live here.
Yes.
I do want to ask you, Kim, it's a version of what Tim's talking about, but it's different. And again, you've done a lot of live reporting in breaking news situations over the years. How do you find that balance between narrating what's in front of you and what you see, trying to be clear with the viewers, but of course you're talking on a night like that to a very large audience, and there's no producer to double check or anything. How do you think about that in your mind? I remember you were talking about the officers you were seeing going by, watching buses, which became part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, see it, say it, I think is sort of the gospel for us in that moment. And, like Tim, in that moment, I'm trying to also connect with sources when I'm not on the air. So making phone calls, sending text messages, talking to people, frankly, who were on lockdown inside the building as well, to get a better sense. This scene was different because there was that shelter-in-place order. Usually when you go to a breaking news scene, you want to talk to the people who were there, who saw things, and get as many interviews as possible. The streets were deserted by design. The only people who were out there were officers, as you can see here, with long guns and in tactical gear. But I tried to talk to as many people as I could. There were bus drivers who were coming by to evacuate the people in the buildings. I knocked on their window and talked to them. So you're just trying to get as much information as you can scrape together in any way that you can, and constantly, using your own judgment, your own, when you've been doing this a long time, you sort of have a sense of, okay, this is the information that I know I am safe to relay in this moment, and that's how you proceed.
And Ted, real quick, for me on set, Kim is in many ways our eyewitness. So there were times when she was on live on the air, and I can talk to Kim. We're all wearing earpieces and we're connected through the control room, and she is our eyes and ears at Brown University in that moment. And so I had some questions for Kim that, look, we're sort of peeling back the curtain for people in a big breaking news moment. I'm asking her questions in real time about what she is seeing and things that I'm hearing from my sources, and is it matching up with what she's seeing in that moment? So really valuable.
And I want to take a moment to recognize that so many of our colleagues who are working so hard, have been working so hard for days. A long list of people. Look at our website. You will see every face of Channel 12. Our photographers, our reporters as well, sending in crucial information when they're out there with their cameras, and the rest of the press corps, not just Channel 12. I mean, this has been an enormous undertaking to try to get this straight. And I want to give a special shout out to the Brown Daily Herald, where the students at the student newspaper are covering a tragedy on their own campus and covering it very well. We're going to take another break. Now that we've talked through Saturday, we want to talk through how this story has changed rapidly on Sunday when authorities had to redirect their investigation. Stick with us. We'll talk to you about how that played out on Behind the Story. Welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm Ted Nesi, filling in for Eli Sherman, joined by my colleagues Kim Kalunian and Tim White to discuss ongoing coverage of the Brown University shooting. Let's talk about Sunday. We all woke up from a long day Saturday with what seemed to be good news for the investigators, that they had detained someone. And in the first part of the day, there was a thinking that this was potentially going to turn into the suspect, perhaps someone who would be arrested. That is not how it played out. Tim, talk a little how it played out over the course of the day.
Yeah, so as you said, we had gotten the news that somebody was in custody, and pretty early on in that day, I had gotten the name of an individual that they had in custody, who I'm not going to say here because it turned out not to be the shooter. But the people, so I look at it in two ways. You have indirect and direct sources, and I was getting from indirect sources, so people not directly involved in the investigation. I hear this person is in custody. I then go to direct sources, try to be judicious because they're very busy, and they told me early on, yes, that is the person we have in custody, but look, we don't know if that is the actual shooter. So we made, in discussion with you and others, we made the decision just to kind of hold our water in reporting on that name until it came into more into focus. And our colleague, Sheena Lasciuto, that evening was starting to hear from her law enforcement sources that they might be letting this guy go. And all of a sudden, the whole tenor of that evening changed. And before we knew it, there was an emergency press conference held at 11 o'clock where the mayor and others had
Well, and it was interesting, too, because, you have sources in different places flowing information. So our best sourcing in the Channel 12 newsroom, it won't surprise anyone, are local sources, local officials, local officers, local law enforcement. I was also in touch with people who, with more of a Washington sense of the situation. So Maine Justice, the Department of Justice, the FBI headquarters. Deep into Sunday evening, those people were telling me they're pretty confident this is a guy. I don't hear anything like what you're saying. I think you might just be getting rumors up there in Providence.
And that suggests a real disconnect, maybe, between the local law enforcement and the Department of Justice in those few hours. I'm not saying constantly all the time, but in that critical moment that you're getting different information from different parts of the country.
And Kim, then there's the deep breath for all the reporters that this is not going to be the Monday and subsequent days we had been expecting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a roller coaster of a weekend to have, like you said, within that first hour of the shooting, okay, we have the shooter. Oh, actually, no, we don't. Happens again Sunday. We have a person of interest. We're letting that person go. I mean, it was really an emotional roller coaster. And then you go into Monday thinking, okay, where do we go from here? What is going to happen today? And then we started to get some of the images of this person. They were, not great at first. They've increasingly gotten better as they've collected more and more video of this person of interest. And then just today, they put out another image of a different person that they want to talk to as well. And so now we're starting to, as we've heard law enforcement say, pull at a different thread. But, so many question marks still around who was responsible for this horrific act of violence as we sit here, as we've mentioned on Wednesday, after this unfolded on Saturday.
The other thing we are all experiencing, I think, is that, I often say to my journalism students, to others in the newsroom, what would 9/11 have been like in the social media age, as people? And I say that because you see after every breaking news event now, a rush to fill the void of information on social media. And we're seeing names heavily publicized as potential suspects, even when slapped down by officials. Now, yes, do officials always get it right? Do officials always tell us exactly what they don't? No, but no sign we're seeing from officials that the name that has been circulating is someone of interest to them. AI images being created. I mean, Tim, not to age you, you've been doing this a little longer than Kim and I. This is a very different landscape for reporters to navigate information-wise.
No question. And when you started the show, you asked about other big events, and I said I covered 9/11 when I was working in Boston at the time. You make a great point. I can't even imagine covering that at a time like this, where there is so much misinformation that is being floated around. I can't overstate, especially those deep fake AI images that we are seeing of the suspect being put out there. That slows the investigation down. I talk to law enforcement because what happens is that generates bogus tips. Oh, I know who that person is. And then an FBI agent, a Providence cop, a Rhode Island state trooper has to go out and run that down. An illegitimate tip based on a bad social media post. Very frustrating to us as journalists. 10 times more frustrating for law enforcement trying to solve this case.
And Kim, you've been out most days since the shooting. You've been on Brown's campus.
Yes.
You've been on Thayer Street. Again, as you said earlier, you grew up there practically, going to school in that area when you were a teenager. I just want to end on, we've seen some poignant images by our photographers. Ryan Welch sent one in today of a little Christmas tree with a stocking with the names of the two victims on it in the memorial. What, if you're even able to step back in your mind for a moment on this crazy couple of days, what image or moment that you've witnessed comes to mind first?
Yeah, we should mention the names of the victims, Ella Cook and Mohammed Aziz Umerzakov. The community at Brown and beyond is truly heartbroken over their loss. You've heard from friends, from family members, that these were two promising, bright young people who had their whole lives ahead of them. And that is, what we can't forget about this whole thing. In the midst of the search for a suspect and the unease and the chaos and the finger pointing, 2 kids were killed. And it's just heartbreaking. They had so much promise, and you can really feel that, especially at the scene. We've seen people coming by, especially yesterday, again on Tuesday, laying flowers and just having, a moment of silence outside of that building. There's still crime scene tape up there. I think, trying to reflect on everything that's happened. Like you said, Tim, it feels like it's been a month since it happened. It's only been a few days. And I think people are still certainly trying to process everything that's just unfolded in our backyard.
Yeah, I think this is a story that's going to play out in a lot of different ways in 2026. I mean, I would hope by then, hopefully there's a suspect, someone arrested by then.
Yes.
We just don't know right now.
Yeah.
But there'll be a lot of other questions. All right, we have to wrap up this edition of Behind the Story. I'm Ted Nesi, filling in for Eli Sherman, been joined by Kim Kalunian and Tim White. You can catch this show every week for breakdowns of the latest big stories in the news, and you can catch the rest of us on 12 News. We'll see you back here next week.